Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. The other day I had showed the Arteza gray toned 80-pound paper, and so today I thought I'd just give it a try. I was told that it works really well with the Arteza Expert Colored pencils, and so I knew for sure I was going to do it with that. This is 80 pounds, so it's not real heavy, but it also has this texture to it. They call it a sketch pad. So I'm going to cut this down. Because it measures 9 by 12, I'm going to go ahead and cut that down to have 3 backgrounds, and also I'm going to save the last piece for some stamping. So I'm cutting it down to, each piece will be 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, except that last piece. That one's going to be a little bit bigger because I wasn't sure how much I would need for stamping. But these first 3, like I said, are going to be for backgrounds. I wanted to try something a little bit different. This is not at all watercolor paper, but I'm going to try using some water mediums on it. I watched Jennifer McGuire the other day using her Distress Oxides on some paper. I think it was some Distress watercolor paper, but I thought I would go ahead and spray this right onto the gray toned paper. I wasn't sure how it would take it, but I thought, oh, if it looks so pretty on black, you know these Distress Oxide sprays are going to look kind of cool on gray. So it did actually accept it really, really well. And I did this right on my glass mat, which I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really recommend unless you have a ton of space around you to work. I had spray everywhere. I had put up like a little bit of a cloth to kind of protect the things on the back of my desk, but I still had spray everywhere, so I really don't recommend it. But I thought I would go ahead and use the color that I had down on my glass mat, so I spritzed it with water and then stuck those other couple pieces right into it to pick up some of that color. And now I'm heat setting that. But these worked out fine, honestly. I mean, I wouldn't go crazy like dipping it in water, but you know, I spritzed this stuff. I didn't spritz a bunch of water on it or anything, but I spritzed the Distress Oxides. I spritzed the water or the color that was on my mat with water and picked it up, and these held up just fine. So that was actually a very happy accident. I know this paper isn't designed for Distress Oxide sprays, but just so you know, it works really well with it. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in my makeshift splatter box so that way I can splatter some ink. So I took the cap off and I'm just splattering, getting some splatters. And then I even took one of them and sandwiched it on top so that I could just pick up some of the excess. And then I'll do that with the cracked pistachio. I don't think I mentioned which colors I used. I used Faded Jeans, Wilted Violet, and Cracked Pistachio. And these are actually from the very first 12 that were released in the beginning when Distress Oxide sprays first came out. I love these so much. I'd love to get others, but I'm going to have to, you know, budget and space, say I'll just stick with what I got for now. Maybe I'll add to my collection later. But now I've got all 3 of those backgrounds ready to go. I'm putting the leftover piece that I had inside of my mini Misti, and I'm going to ink up the Clearly Besotted Hippo Halloween stamp. I thought these would be absolutely perfect for these backgrounds and for that gray toned paper. And I did end up biting the bullet and buying the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink because I wanted to give it a try. People have been raving about it, and I'm used to using my VersaFine Onyx Black, but I will say the annoying thing about that is that the lid doesn't come off. So I thought I would give it a try. So I inked it up a couple times, and I'm going to go ahead and keep those stamps right inside my Misti because I will show you why later. This is a pigment ink, so it does need to be dried before you do any sort of coloring on top of it. And I wouldn't recommend it for any sort of alcohol marker coloring, but I am using the Arteza Expert Colored Pencils. Now the key with colored pencils is that you want to not have a heavy hand. You want to start off soft and you want to work your way up to the color. It looks like I'm being kind of heavy-handed, but I promise you I'm not. And as you can tell with using colored pencils, when you go over those lines, you end up dulling those lines, which is why I'm going to keep my stamps inside my Misti for later on. I'll move on to coloring the other hippo. And these are all just the different gray tones that I had inside that set of 72. So the Arteza pencils I want to say they're pretty similar to the Prismacolor. They're just less expensive, and it's a thicker lead. I think these are probably a little bit more waxy because you will get a little bit more wax buildup. But as I said, with colored pencils, you want to work in layers and you want to work softly. You do not want to have a heavy hand. So I'm just working in layers, adding a little more color, blending that out a little bit more. And it doesn't really look like a whole lot right now, but when I start to get those other colors, because keep in mind we're, obviously coloring gray on top of a gray cardstock. Once I start adding those other colors, these little hippos are really going to come to life. I love this little set because it's inexpensive and it's got 3 cute little hippos that you can color any way you want. But again, not very expensive. Now I'm going in just with some of the white to highlight on those little hippos' noses. And then I'm going to bring in 3 purple colors for the hat. I'm trying to incorporate some of those colors that I used for, as in the sprays, like the Wilted Violet. I'm trying to incorporate those in with my colored pencil coloring. So I'll bring in a little bit darker color. And I don't really have an area where I'm thinking the light is coming from. I am just putting in my darker shades where I think they would look good. And so that is why we've got dark, of course, underneath the hat, because that just makes sense. And then I also bring in just a little bit of dark around those rims, the rim of the hat, and then on the one right-hand side of the hat. I will say, if you've noticed, I don't tend to go all the way to my edges with my darker colors. That will give you the illusion that whatever you're coloring is round. So that's why I don't always go right to the edges with my darker shades. And then I'll bring in that even darker purple. And then I'll even bring it in just a little bit on the top of the hat. I don't want that to be too much darker than what's underneath the hat. Now I'm going to bring in some black, and I'm going light-handed with that as well, just on the band of her hat, and then I'm going to bring that over to our little vampire hippo for his cape, and I want to incorporate the purple into his little cape as well, so I will bring in the purple for the underside and the back side of that cape as well. Just doing the same thing that I did on the hat, just being very light-handed, and bringing in the darker shades where I think the shading would be, and then going back over that lightly with the lighter colors to sort of bring out that color. And then they really start to come to life here. And then I'll move on to the broom, just using a yellow and a darker yellow, of course. Now, going back to this paper, is this something that someone needs to have? No, I don't think you need to have this paper. It does come in, so the sketch pad itself is 50 sheets, and it comes in a pack of 2. So you're going to have it for a long, long time. It isn't something someone needs, but I will say that it is a lot of fun to add to your coloring repertoire. You can bring in different colors to color on top of. We often color on craft, and of course we color on white, and sometimes we even color on black, but bringing in that gray, especially for like this was a Halloween themed card, or cards, because I end up with 3 cards. It was so much fun, and I will absolutely be using this pad again in the future. And for the price point, it's, like I said, it's not like it takes up a ton of space in your craft space, and it's just fun to have. So I'm going to go back over the pumpkin just with I guess it's a yellow, and then I'll go over it with a darker orange, and then I'll even bring in that darker orange around the buckle of our little hippo. And then when I'm done there, we're going to go ahead and put this right back in our Misti, exactly where it was before, and then we're going to ink up our stamps with the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and then we will stamp down those images, and then you're going to see how much, that looks good. So it is a pigment ink, so I do heat set it, and then before I start fussy cutting it out here. And as far as the ink goes, it's probably very, very similar to VersaFine Onyx Black ink, but I will say the lid, the lid is nice, that you can take it off and set it aside rather than trying to do the hinge lid like the VersaFine. All right, now that everything has been stamped, I even stamped an extra little pumpkin. I'm stamping out the sentiments now, just using that same ink. And so I've got Trick or Treat, I stamped that out twice, and then I've got Best Witches. I stamped that one out as my 3rd sentiment. And then we're going to take another piece of the gray paper and we're going to spritz that with some Fossilized Amber Distress Oxide spray. I'll heat that, and then I'm going to stick this into my paper or my die cutting machine with a circle die 3 separate times. I covered it with some of that gray paper just so that the Distress Oxide wouldn't transfer onto my cutting plates because that can make a mess. And now I'm trimming down my sentiments, and then I'll attach those a little bit later. My card bases are going to be some Raven cardstock from Brutus Monroe. I have cut that down to 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and then I'm scoring it at 5 1/2 inches to make a top folding A2 size card. And then I trimmed down some more of that gray toned paper, but I cut these down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, so they'll have a little border. And I'm going to stamp out each of the images using some Wilted Violet Distress Oxide ink onto the 3 separate pieces that I have, because these are going to go on the inside of my cards. And I'm inking up Eek, and I'll put that on each one of those 3 times. I just think this adds a little fun to the inside of your card. I'm really enjoying finishing off the insides of each of my cards now. Because this is a lightweight paper, I decided to use 1/8 inch Scor-Tape rather than my typical liquid glue. I wasn't sure how that would work, and I put in so much work to these cards that I didn't want to take the risk. So I peeled off all that backing paper, and then I'll put that on the inside of my card, and then we'll get ready to assemble the outside. Using that same 1/8 inch Scor-Tape, I'm going to adhere down my moon. So that's why I made those little yellow circles using the Fossilized Amber Distress Oxide. So it's a moon, and our little witch is going to fly across the moon. I'm using some foam tape on the back of her, and I'm also going to use a strip of it behind the sentiment as well. I'll peel off all of my backing paper, and then I'll adhere her down like she's flying. And then I'll use my T ruler to adhere my sentiment to the front, and then I'll turn that over and trim off the excess. And then I'll use the same 1/8 inch Scor-Tape, and I'll adhere that to the front of my card. But I'm not done there. I pull out these Nuvo hot pink stars. These came in a kit of 4, but I'll have that link down below, and I'm just attaching those down with my crystal katana and some Multimedia matte adhesive. And I was pretty liberal with the little stars. They were fun, and I end up doing the same thing to all 3 cards. I won't show you the making of all 3 cards because it's the same process. But yeah, I end up loving how these turned out. They were so much fun, and I love how the Distress Oxides worked on top of that gray toned paper. These worked out really well for a Halloween themed card. I can think of all kinds of other things you could use it for as well too. So as always, I will have everything that I used linked down below in the description box, as well as links to the haul video where I showed this stamp set and the paper that I've got, as well as a link to the colored pencil review of these Arteza colored pencils. So if you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. I typically have about at least 4 videos a week. And I appreciate all the love and support you guys give, all of the nice comments, and even using my affiliate links. It helps support me so much. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by.